Welcome, everybody. It's August 8th, 2024, and you've joined Boston 9/11 Truth. And tonight we have a guest speaker, Aidan Monaghan, who has done fabulous research on remote control. And he has a lot to say about that. And he's was recommended by Ted Walter. So we're very, very pleased to have him tonight. So welcome, Aidan. Unmute yourself and tell us a little more about yourself and your research. You're still muted, Aidan.
Be nice to see
There he
you.
is.
There
we are. Thanks for having me. And how do we sound today?
you're coming in loud and clear.
Excellent. I don't know how you want to proceed today. Did you want to start with questions or just have me commence with some presentation?
Yeah, commence with the presentation. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in 9/11 and questioning the official story. Just a little bit of your background.
Okay, sure. Educated and once upon a time employed in the electronics engineering field. Became aware of 9/11 anomalies around 2005. Followed the work of Jones, Gage, Ryan, and others, and came to the conclusion as well that the WTC buildings were probably destroyed by sabotage, implosion, controlled demolition, what have you, and realized at that point then, therefore, the aircraft attacks themselves were probably the result of similar sabotage. And I set off on a journey to find out if this capability existed. And sure enough, even to my, still to my surprise, found out that that was in fact the case. And I believe I've accumulated enough evidence to make a good argument for the case that the 9/11 flights were possibly or even probably the result of GPS guided autopilot control, unreported, of course, by any authorities. Essentially, that's a summary of how I began all of this. And I suppose I can proceed with questions or any further presentation on my part.
Well, why don't we start with the presentation? Do you want me to bring up your first screen?
Oh, sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Share screen. There we go. All right, can everybody see this okay?
I can.
Yes.
By the way.
We can see.
All right, excellent. All right. Go ahead, tell us what we were looking at.
Sure, that is a Boeing animation of what is essentially a virtual highway in the sky that was all made possible around circa 2000 by augmented GPS service and compatible aircraft avionics systems manufactured by companies like Honeywell and Rockwell Collins. And these were meant to replace legacy radio nav aids like VOR, DME, which is distance measuring equipment, VOR, very high frequency omni range receivers. For all the nerds out there like myself. So yeah, that became available, this technology, around circa 2000. For R&D purposes, they didn't become officially available for airline commercial use until about 2003, once the FAA certified these systems. And they basically allow for an accuracy and a 95% containment reliability within a virtual highway in the sky, as narrow as 243 feet. The measurement standard is referred to as RNP, required navigation performance 0.02, which refers to nautical miles, which is of course about 120 some odd feet. Radius length, the diameter left to right, therefore width of this virtual highway in the sky is about 243 feet. That's about the maximum accuracy was available at the time I drafted a paper in 2008 on the subject. And the World Trade Center towers themselves were 208 feet wide. So you're looking at a nice fit. 243 wide virtual highways in the sky, a building at 200 feet wide. Yeah, so
Is
long
that
story short.
is that what it's called, virtual highway in the sky, or is there a more technical name for this technology?
Yeah, I went over the RNP description.
Okay.
The augmented GPS technology, the avionics, compatible avionics for the planes. Yeah, so that is essentially a layperson's for the layperson's sake that name was generated by the industry. Highway in the sky, and that's essentially what you're looking at in the one illustration there.
All right.
And this all became available just prior to 9/11, not surprisingly, perhaps.
The year 2000.
Yes, the augmented GPS service became available in May of 2000, and that was ordered by then Defense Secretary Cohen under Clinton. And the avionics packages were announced by Honeywell, Boeing, and Rockwell Collins to have been installed in the 757, 767 planes of Boeing's by as early as 1998 and subsequently 1999. We see a lot of coincidental, the coincidental emergence of a lot of technology simultaneously that seem to make all of this possible just prior to 9/11. A lot of the research and development began in 95. There were many test flights using Boeing aircraft, 757s of NASA's, 767s of either commercial airliners or freight carriers like UPS, FedEx. These planes were borrowed for research and development purposes by organizations such as Ohio University, Stanford University, NASA, of course. Essentially, that's a good summary of that collection of entities and technology. So what I guess many people may not realize is, the typical human pilot flight control time of a typical commercial flight, Boston to LA, for example, only comprises or spans about 3 minutes, 90 seconds at takeoff, 90 seconds at landing, and the rest of the flight is under remote or autopilot control, let's say.
Right.
Many people might not be aware of that, so it's not a reach to then entertain possibilities that these flights on 9/11 may have been themselves under autopilot control. The legacy nav aids I referred to earlier would not have supported what we hypothesize here today for 9/11. They were just not accurate enough. The augmented GPS even supports ascending and descending turns. These highways in the sky are not just straight, they can be curved, ascending or descending. And coincidentally or not, that's what we see in a few cases on 9/11, particularly the Pentagon. You have that 270-degree descending loop prior to impact. You see this also in the Trade Center flights. They were banked and descending trajectories into the buildings.
Okay. So let me know when you want me to bring up the next slide.
Yeah, we can proceed to the next.
Okay. And subsequently, just let me know when you want the next slide after that too.
Certainly, thank you.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question, Aidan?
Sure.
I read somewhere Boeing filed for a patent called composite aircraft in '54 related to the means and methods for controlling an airliner. Were you aware of any earlier development in the '90s or '80s and '90s?
Could you repeat the title of the technology again?
It was called Boeing filed for a patent called composite aircraft in 1954 that related to the method and means to control an airliner.
Interesting. I hadn't been aware of that. I know of they had a technology development, or it was even spoken about by Bush at the time. There is a name for it, a title. It slips my mind at this point, but
Is that Ames?
uninterruptible autopilot, I think it's referred to as,
Boeing
where the controls of a plane can be taken over remotely in the event of an emergency.
Thank you, sir. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for the question. So that's image number 2 there. Yeah, I was describing earlier the RNP standard for the industry, and the circle on the right sort of illustrates what I had mentioned about the nautical mile measure for accuracy. And in the case of the 9/11 flights, for example, uh, as low as 0.02 nautical miles is the maximum accuracy I think that was available. And even today, it might still be the case. But at the time of the research in around '08, that was the case as well. So yeah, 243 foot wide corridors into a 200-foot target is, as I had mentioned earlier, a nice fit. Typical commercial airport runway widths are 150 feet. So those are standard and typical and don't present a problem for the technology or the industry. So it's not entirely unrealistic to wonder whether or not the 9/11 flights were even possible in the first place. The technology seems to all have been there and appeared on scene, curiously, just right before the event itself. And in fact, all the research and development seemed to come to a sudden end right after 9/11. It seemed to go on right up until, I think, the summer of 2001, and then just immediately stopped. I guess they had done enough to know what they had wanted to get from it.
Interesting.
And if anyone has any questions, if I'm being like not descriptive enough, please stop me and I'll try to elaborate. I don't know if we want to proceed to another slide.
Sure. Okay. Is that the one? Yeah.
Okay, there we go. The 208-foot wide tower, the 156-foot long wingspan of a 767, and the aforementioned 243-foot wide virtual highway in the sky corridor. There's as I said, a nice fit apparently underway there in that illustration, and that's what the technology supported on 9/11. It was there. It was for R&D purposes only, an ideal covert tool for any foul play, in my humble opinion. So if we can, perhaps we can proceed to the next image.
Can we just ask, what's the accuracy of that? In other words, how much variation could they have within that 240 feet? I mean,
Well, the standard refers to a 95% containment accuracy. So in other words, there was a 95% containment accuracy for a measure that precise. There are various different standards, like for international approaches and international flight, let's say, en route flight, as it's known, approaches, and so on. There are different measures for different needs.
Does that mean it could be off a couple of feet each way at the most, or?
Yeah, the accuracy was described as about 3 meters left, right, up, and down.
Wow.
And this would depend, of course, on flight conditions and the performance of gyroscopes and accelerometers, laser gyros and accelerometers, and to calibrate these systems. In fact, they're so sensitive that when the pilot's on board the flight deck pre-flight, in order to calibrate these systems, it's not recommended that anyone be on board the aircraft at that time moving around, because they're that sensitive, even on a tarmac, unmoving.
Wow.
So what speed is that based on? Is there a correlation between the speed of the aircraft, the accuracy?
Is the accuracy limited by aircraft speed or affected? Is that the question?
Right. Is there a correlation between the speed of the aircraft and how much accuracy it can achieve? Like if the aircraft's going say 580 miles an hour versus maybe 280 miles an hour, whatever the landing speed is. I think isn't the landing speed about 180 miles an hour?
Yeah, well, typical runway approach speeds are about 180 miles per hour. I guess
how fast? Well, how fast was the plane going that hit the tower?
175 was moving at about, give or take, 550 miles per hour, which is about 800 feet a second. There seems to be a little dispute between sources. NIST, I think, had one estimate, and I think possibly another agency had different ones.
I have a little question too, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, because maybe you're going to cover that anyway. But I was wondering, so even if we establish that the technology existed and that it was possible, given all the stats that you just shared, for these planes to be remote controlled into the buildings, is there anything to indicate that that is in fact what happened? Not just that it was possible technically in the abstract, but that it really did happen. Do you have any kind of indicators for that?
I believe I do. What you're looking at now is a still frame from a video provided by CBS, within which we can see the final 8 seconds of flight of a total of 13 for flight 175. What you see in the frame here is 175 entering the video frame. It then goes behind some smoke cover and then reappears and is essentially flying directly toward the camera. And from that, we can glean different information. We can see that there's a certain bank angle. We already know what our ground speed is, what our airspeed is based on the wind that was present and its speed. So with that foundation, you can proceed with other calculations that, in my opinion, seem to indicate a high degree of accuracy. It seems, long story short, that the plane was lined up for impact about 1.6 miles distant during the final 5.5 seconds of flight. And that was, I laid this out trigonometrically in one paper, just using cosine's law and there's another one. There's always the Cartesian coordinate system. So those are two methods I arrived at. What you see at the very end of the flight, about 3 seconds out, 2.5, 3 seconds, is a final rolling twist as the plane approaches the building. And I was able to show that even without that little twist at the end there, the plane would still have hit the building from 1.6 miles distant. And so you're either talking about a high degree of luck for an inexperienced alleged amateur, or you're looking at something else, some automation.
That's a pretty blurry picture. It's really hard to make out what we're looking at.
Yeah, it was a very distant shot. It was I'm sure most of us have seen the video from which it's drawn, and I did bring a copy to our conversation today of that, and eventually I hope we can roll that. And it was edited in such a way so to provide
These are the toys. Oh, sorry.
a better look at the plane as it's moving.
So what you're saying, Aidan, is that it had time to kind of really clarify the path in the last mile and be spot on? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. What's interesting about the video is there are no adjustments apparent in the video. The plane, what we see 5.5 seconds out, is a 20-degree bank angle, and it maintains that all the way in, except at the final 3 seconds where it rolls an additional 18 degrees for a 38-degree impact angle. And again, as I mentioned, I've shown, I believe, trigonometry. Trigonometry. Forget it. I'm not even going to try. Using trigonometry, that little twist at the end there was not essential for guaranteeing impact to the building. However, it did create the impression of perhaps reckless human control, because such descriptions appeared in the media, subsequent to 9/11. I do recall some accounts. So as to a reason why that may have taken place, it was perhaps for an impression it creates for the observer of reckless, inexperienced human control of the plane to boost the official narrative, perhaps. But it had nothing to contribute to the accuracy of the flight en route to the building. Again, it wasn't necessary for impact. It only generated about 20 feet, 19 actually, feet additional toward the center of the building. Using trigonometry, I was able to come to that conclusion.
Would you like me to share that YouTube right now?
Yeah, if you could, that would be great.
All right. Gotta find it.
And what you're seeing is the final 13 seconds of flight for the plane. It's descending at about a 10-degree angle of bank, which is very steep, at about a maximum of 10,000 feet per minute at the very end of its descent.
Let me start it over again.
Sure. It's moving at about 800 feet per second.
Okay, I can't seem to expand it for some reason. Don't see the expand button. But anyway, we'll try it.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay.
Now it's just about to enter our frame here. Oh, okay.
There we go.
20-degree bank angle all the way in for 5.5 seconds, except at the end.
All right.
But that 18-degree twist only generates 19 feet of left lateral movement toward the center of the building. It still would hit the building without that little twist at the end. It was actually a pretty dramatic move, actually. 6 degrees per second roll for a total of 18 degrees.
Ah, my computer's having trouble stopping the share screen. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened here. I don't know why that says 2024 excess deaths. That's weird. Somebody's taking over my computer, it seems.
Froze on us. That are available, and there.
Well, my voice isn't breaking up, so my voice would be breaking up if my computer was freezing.
So if you want me to play it real quick.
I'm trying to stop.
Exactly. There we go. I don't know if everyone can see that. 200 feet while moving at a rate of 800 feet per second. So there seems to be a high degree of precision here.
The 4th of July.
And also,
and happy anniversary to all our friends stateside from 1776. We will be watching with interest over the rest of this year what uses and how you utilize your newfound freedom. Let's hope you do slightly better than the somewhat dysfunctional situation we have in the United Kingdom. Now, we're going to be looking at excess deaths today, and I'm going to be taking data from here to begin with. This is the OECD Office for Economic Cooperation.
Ooh, you there?
We produce huge amounts of data.
Who's playing that?
And on
That's your computer. It's coming from you.
Oh, my computer has been taken over by somebody else, it seems. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry about that, Kafa. I have no idea what all that was. Wow, wild stuff. Yeah, I thought you were sharing that.
Well, I was going to share it again. I don't know if Aidan, this is the wider view of that. This is from your YouTube account.
Oh,
yes. It's difficult to see what we're trying to see with that particular video.
Okay, I'll go back to the other one.
Yeah, that allows us to see the bank angle, the stability of flight, the remarkably stable flight. There was an 11-mile-an-hour crosswind present, and so what we see had to account for this, or otherwise be pushed off course by my calculations by 100 feet.
Huh.
Yeah, and how a pilot could do that without instrumentation would be remarkable, but would be standard for the avionics that were available that day in these particular aircraft. The accelerometers, the ring laser gyros, very sensitive instruments. And what you saw, I don't know if it was heard earlier or not, if it got drowned out by the audio of the other recording, but what you see in the video, had it taken place even a half second sooner or after what was observed, the plane necessarily misses the center of the building by about 200 feet left or right. So there's a precise coordination at work here, apparently. The implementation time and the correct bank angle. And if those don't unfold simultaneously, you have different outcomes.
Sue, forgive me, but I see Miles has his hand up.
Yep, Miles, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Aidan. Just to be clear, there's lots of automation even back then on 757 or Boeing 767 to control the flight surfaces. But was this augmented GPS a standard feature on those aircraft at that time, or would these have been specially uniquely equipped for the augmented GPS?
According to the industry, Rockwell Collins and Honeywell made available for installation the avionics that supported these future functions, also relying on the augmented GPS. So by 1998 and 1999, these systems were apparently, according to press releases, to be immediately installed in the 757s and 767s. And they were the first aircraft around that time. In fact, possibly the only around that time that contained these systems. I don't recall seeing any such reports for 737s, for example, or 747s, and certainly none of the Airbus planes at the time. So
a follow-up question, just curiosity, if you know the answer or not. But so I know that I believe it's Category 3 Instrument Landing System, ILS, which uses a localizer and for horizontal and glide slope for vertical. That, you know, on a Category 3 instrument landing system, the plane can land by itself. So with that, plus this augmented GPS, are these planes able to completely fly without pilots from takeoff to landing?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's no automated takeoff capabilities that are authorized at this
Okay.
time, but certainly, 90 seconds or so after takeoff, en route flight and all the way to touchdown, as you said, these planes can land themselves even under legacy nav aids like ILS. There are two types of augmented GPS. There's the wide area augmentation system, which is for en route flight. And then there's the local area augmentation system, which supports the category 1 through 3 landing capabilities. But that technology hasn't been deployed as well as they had perhaps originally planned for some reason. I don't know why, but the technology was there. Whether depending on whether it had been deployed or not.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
Certainly.
And Norman has his hand raised. Go ahead, Norman.
Good evening, everybody. I've just got a couple of questions with regards to the planes. If I can just quickly ramble a couple of points through, I'll greatly appreciate it. So, questions that I've got. If it was a military plane, would there have not been any ELTs activated since when the alleged planes crashed? That would have been picked up by air traffic control. No ELTs were transmitted for any of the 4 alleged planes on 9/11. Do you know of the QTAM whistleblower case filed by Dr. Morgan Reynolds in 2007 and the evidence presented therein? And also, there was also an affidavit by the expert CIA pilot John Lear that held the record once for the fastest flight around the world. And in his affidavit, he made the case for the impossibility of any commercial jetliner or military plane to fly at over 200 miles per hour above the design limits. They would break up. Also, you have the real-world example of Flight 587 that crashed on November 12, 2001 in New York City that proves the aerodynamics, drag, and more will break up or shear off the engines at the claimed speeds at the altitude of the towers. So can you please give me an explanation for that? Because John Lear also said it's impossible for any plane to be remotely pointed. And Flight 587 is a real-world example proving to you that the aerodynamics, drag coefficients, and everything like that is impossible for a real plane to go at the speeds that were given to us by the government and anything like that. Would love to hear your comment on that.
I really don't know how I could or would account for the physical aerodynamic questions. Whether these planes were over-engineered and therefore survived the speeds they were traveling at, I don't know. It's maybe yes, maybe no. Were these planes modified in some kind of way to sustain such high-speed flight en route to the buildings? I maybe yes, maybe no. So I'm not entirely sure. I know with the Airbus flight that you referred to, 587 American Airlines, I know that the contributing factor to the accident was the overuse of the rudder by the co-pilot, who was very aggressively operating foot pedals and overstressed the airframe, and the plane lost its rudder and quickly crashed.
Yeah, but the physical aspect of that plane crash was that when it exceeded the design limits of the plane, the engines sheared off. They actually hit the ground before the plane actually did. So it's impossible for any plane of that size to fly that low at those speeds. And pilots for 9/11 Truth, with regards to all four planes, have gone into great depths discussing how it's impossible. And the main thing is that most people around here aren't capable of actually realizing that they actually saw Project Bluebeam in action on 9/11 and a bunch of other
Project
aspects
Bluebeam, if I
that
may.
aren't. Dude, if you go and listen to the work of Mark Conlon with regards to ELTs and the various anomalies with regards to air data showing that the planes were still actively being tracked by air traffic control on the day, showing that they were in points further than the places where they apparently crashed. It's declassified documents. Mark Conlon has spent 14 years delving into the planes. You can go onto his blog. You can go onto his Substack. You can go onto his YouTube channels where he's proven that all the various documentaries that have been pushed out there in the last 23 years are complete and utter B/S. Okay? And people that can't fathom that with absolute declassified official documents, even live video on the day that was being pushed out on national television showing the radar data of where those planes were. Sorry, sir. I'm going to really disagree with you. Even John Lear, a guy who had the record for the fastest jet plane around the world,
Norman,
actually said it's impossible. So
Norman,
now
please,
you want to actually
please.
sit here and say that you know better than him.
Norman.
Sorry, no, that just doesn't cut it.
Norman,
So you're suggesting therefore video fakery? Is that where this is going?
Video fakery is absolute bull. Mark Conlon has also debunked the CGI disinformation with regards to all of that.
What
The
do you
main
think you saw on
aspect is
9/11?
there was different technologies out there that a lot of people don't actually realize, okay? And people just can't conceptualize the aspects and the technology in play on 9/11. That's why
What did we
none of
see
the
on
9/11
9/11?
truther talking heads ever really go into
All right,
the
excuse me, somebody's
plain
hacked my
aspect.
account and somebody's drawing stuff as me, so I don't know, somebody in here is hacking stuff.
yes,
cool.
this is not polite. We have a lot of new guests here that have never joined before. And we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more slides to go through. I would ask everyone to please be considerate and let our guest complete his presentation. Otherwise,
let's reserve the questions until after he's finished.
those weren't questions. It started out as questions, but then it started going into an attack mode, and that's not appreciated.
Right, well, in order
No,
to
sir, it's
solve
not
that.
attack. It's not attack. It's been 23 years. All of
BS
these,
is
all
an
of
attack.
this has been
Using the
discussed
BS.
numerous
I will
times.
mute you now because you're not being polite. Okay,
Roland Fold, George Bush.
who is that? Everyone is to be muted except for the speaker.
Still here.
Thank you. All right. Shall I proceed with the next slide, Aidan?
Certainly. I guess, and while you're doing that, the earlier speaker mentioned ELT activations upon impact, and there was a reported ELT activation for, I believe, Flight 11. As for the continual post-crash radar tracks that were still available after the crashes of the flights, those, to my knowledge, were based on filed flight plans. Whether that's a true claim by the FAA or not, it is what it is. That's what they offered as to the so-called Phantom 11 flight that continued to appear on radar screens after its impact with Building 1.
May I ask who is drawing on this share screen?
Yeah, who did that?
I'm gonna stop sharing.
I'm curious as well.
Yeah, this is not going well. Certain individuals are gonna have to be banned from this group because
COINTELPRO.
yeah, this is not cricket at all. It's not very nice.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All right, so share screen. Let's see, I've lost my place. Which one? Are we on 5? I think we're on 5. Yes. Okay.
Okay, and that's the final moment of 20-degree banked flight for 175. It then proceeds to roll another 18 degrees. And I think we covered the details of that video and what we see in it earlier. So if you want, we can move on to the next.
Okay.
And what the caller earlier brought up is a valid question. You know, apparently
Yes.
aerodynamically, the planes did not support such speeds at such altitudes. I don't know why the flights survived as they did, whether they were over-engineered or modified somehow.
All right.
Those are certain possibilities.
It's always
Yeah,
when
I
certain
know.
people
I am
join these
aware. And I'm
calls.
trying to stop it.
They took control of mine too. There's people in here that are doing that.
All right.
We're over the target.
This right now.
Can you see who's doing it? I guess there's some of the people who just joined.
I think someone's hacking.
Yeah, we're getting hacked.
Yeah,
I'm gonna end
our
the
streams
call.
have also been.
Wait.
I'm gonna end the call.
I'll try and find them real quick. Can you give me co-host real quick? I'll ban them for you. I think I know who it is.
All right. Who's talking right now?
That was Jeff. Whoever Jeff is, we're hoping he's honest.
Well, I'm not gonna allow a co-host to someone I don't know.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, I'm not gonna do that. What I'm gonna do is end this call.
Why don't you just keep the people you trust, Susan?
All right. Let's see.
Their faces, you know, and the rest of people can get the hell off. It's time for, you know.
Aidan, thank you for what you're doing, and I appreciate it. Yeah, you're over the target if people are going to come here and try to hack.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good indicator, if anything.
I don't know you. You're being removed.
Hey, Jeff here. I turned on my camera just to confirm I'm a real person.
How did you hear about this call?
I found it on Twitter.
On
And I wanted to join because I want to learn more about it.
I didn't.
Oh, well, somebody posted on Twitter. I assumed it was the host.
It was probably Norman. Norman,
Oh.
did you post it on Twitter?
Well, I'm actually here to learn like more about this because what?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm actually here to learn though. Sorry.
Well, if anybody misbehaves, who's Alfred Guest? It's not Al Magelletta, is it? Maybe it is. Okay.
Give a shout out to Captain Tony Robbins that joined us as a pilot. So he'd be interested in hearing what Aidan has to share here. Tony, we just got interrupted by a hacker, so we're trying to get through that right
And
now.
we're just cleaning up the mess a little bit.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sir.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Tony. How are you?
Hi, who's this?
Name's Jeff from Hawaii.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
All right. Let's see.
Tony, do you know
Hi,
Aidan?
Jeff. Norman here from South Africa.
Can't get rid of this.
So, Tony is covering remote control perspective of 9/11 or Aidan, sorry.
Aidan is, and Aidan has been working with, or at least no, he was referred to the call by Ted Walter. And obviously you're connected to Ted also. So I don't know if you guys already crossed paths or not, Tony and Aidan.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
No? Okay.
All right. Oh,
So Tony's a firefighter and a pilot.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
You're
So-
muted, Tony. You're muted, Tony.
There we go. No, I'm retired from firefighting now.
Right. But once
Yeah,
a firefighter, always a firefighter now.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome.
I'll take a hit for you.
I did the best I could. Not very many people would listen to me.
all right.
Hey man, you're brave for what you did. I appreciate it.
Hopefully I've removed all the troublemakers. I hope I haven't removed anyone who wasn't a troublemaker.
You actually removed William. That's not a troublemaker.
Oh dear. Okay. If I didn't recognize the name, I had to remove them if they hadn't joined before.
Let's
He's
continue.
got a
and
really successful YouTube channel.
Let's continue. If it happens again, then we'll go there. What do you think?
All right, what slide were we on? I think we were on 6.
Also, Sue, you can disable white screen sharing in your settings.
Uh,
Oh, Richard, I would love to have a direct conversation with you.
I'm sure you would.
oh, it already says host only. All right. Huh. Okay. All right. Let's try this again. I apologize, everyone, about this, but it's a bit of excitement and a learning experience for all of us, I think. Okay. Is that the next screen, Aidan?
I believe that's frame 6. So 6 and 7 complement one another. So number 6 shows the
Oh, dear.
actual.
Oh, Jesus.
Michael
Christ.
Fields. All right. Michael Fields, you're gone. Where are you?
We are over the target.
On the list. There's no Michael Fields on this list who has joined us.
He changed his name to Bob. You trust me, make me co-host. I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, just let Gene handle it.
You can trust me with co-host too.
You don't know him.
Right,
Thank you, Jeff, but we don't know you.
right. I can't do it.
My name's Jeff Finkelstein. I'm from Hawaii.
William Henderson is okay.
Where in Hawaii are you from, Jeff?
William
Honolulu.
Winder,
Okay.
Yes,
he's
sir.
joined. Should I admit him? William Henderson? Anybody know William?
Yep, he's my buddy. He's my buddy from Scotland.
Okay. Oh, Scottish. I have a Scottish daughter.
Yeah, with complete and utter critical thinking skills.
All right, share participants, make co-hosts. Let's see. How do I do that? Okay, there, let's see, make co-host, there we are. Okay, thank you, Jane. Yeah. All right. Okay,
Jean, when are we going to have your promised discussion with regards to dew and thermite that you completely backtracked on?
We're here for Aidan Monaghan. I have nothing to say to you, Norman.
Why don't you dump him, Gene?
all right, so we are on screen number 6. Aidan, tell us what we're looking at.
That's a NIST illustration of the actual orientation of the plane at impact. This includes that final 18-degree twist that I mentioned earlier. And without that 18-degree twist, in the next frame, number 7, you notice that the plane shifts to the right slightly. That's the 19 feet that I mathematically accounted for, absent the final twist. So I mentioned earlier that the final twist wasn't necessary to achieve impact. It only generated 19 additional feet toward the building's center. So basically what you're looking at in the video seen earlier is a final 5.5 seconds of flight that was on target with the building 1.6 miles distant. And that can be found in one of 2 papers I published on the topic at the Journal of 9/11 Studies back in 09, I believe it was.
Somebody is taking over my computer. I can't control my mouse.
Wow. Speaking of remote control.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I don't know how this happened.
Did you get it back, Sue?
No, it's like dancing all over the place. Wait a minute. No, it's fine now.
Okay.
Well, we just booted Jeff and now you got
Yeah.
control of your mouse.
So that was Jeff.
This is insidious.
It's toxic.
Yeah. Not fair play at all.
There's a couple of names left in there to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't, as a stranger, have asked to be host if
Right.
he were on a level.
Yeah. So do I have the correct share screen now? I'm totally lost. Aidan,
Yes. Question?
do I have
The correct image? Yeah, they're almost impossible to distinguish unless you look closely. But yeah, number 6 shows what we actually, what NIST alleges took place on 9/11. And in frame number 7, subsequently, is what we see based on calculations I did using trigonometry and known measures such as bank angle and ground speed and airspeed.
Yeah, it's a good, because it's such a foggy photo, that triangle helps.
Yeah, it's not the greatest resolution. I apologize.
Okay.
They're old pictures, at least 15 years old.
You work with what you have. All right, I'm going to stop share and go to the next one.
Number 8, yeah, we can proceed to that.
Okay.
And what you're looking at there is a simulation overhead of Manhattan and the flight path based on NTSB documentation of Flight 175 en route to Building 2. And you see 4 different stars, and those are separated by 1 second increments. And I mentioned earlier that the flight profile that we observe in the video, had it been implemented a half second sooner or later than observed, results in the plane missing the building wide left or right. And I try to illustrate all of that in this image here. Identical flight legs beginning at different times. Time 0, time 1, time 2 seconds, time 3 seconds, and the corresponding miss distances of those start times of the bank angle that we see during the flight. And again, this is all just explained in more detail and probably better in the paper I mentioned earlier. But this is one of the illustrations that I put into a book on the topic a few years ago.
That's Tim Crook drawing on the picture.
Okay.
I don't even see him on the list here.
Wow, that's an interesting
I
aircraft there.
I got rid of Tim Crook.
Okay.
What model aircraft are we looking at today? I don't even want to go there.
What grade, what age are these people? I mean, really?
Probably on someone's payroll.
Well, they're trying to make this thing basically unshareable.
Exactly.
Because, you know, you can either sit there and edit out all the graphics that are offensive, but then you have to cut out what's being said during this. So anyways, it just puts you in a really, really bad position.
I'm just gonna, Sue, forgive me, I'm gonna speak out here. If you're against me, let me know. But anybody that's Norman's friend is going to disappear, because it seems when Norman comes around, this stuff happens.
And he
So,
keeps asking to be readmitted, and I keep exiting it out. So yeah, he's banned. Because this is sabotage, and it's not right. Yeah, here he is asking again. Nope, he's not allowed. Okay, so do we want the next screen, or do you have more to say about this? Or any,
Yeah, we can move on to the next item. Good.
Anybody have any questions about this screen first?
Yeah, feel free to stop me at any time and ask for more information.
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Jack.
Okay, well, when I was in the service, and this was a long time ago, they had these things that you could place surreptitiously on a building, and then the bomb would, you drop it from high up, and it would go to meet that device. It would home on it. So they could have possibly done something like that to make sure they accurately hit the buildings.
So the same technology could be used for a plane instead of a bomb.
Right.
With the avionics available in the aircraft and the augmented GPS that was available that day as well, an airplane is allowed to know precisely where it is and where it needs to go to get where it needs to get. Long story short, that's about as well as I can put it. I mean, there are other navigation methods available, but probably not as reliable or as effective as a covert tool for foul play actors, let's say, perhaps.
Fran Sure has her hand raised.
Hi, this is actually David Chandler. I'm here with,
Hi, David.
I just came in a few minutes ago, but I just wanted to ask Aidan if he's familiar with Spock's analysis of this by 175 coming in, because he has a somewhat, he has a pretty good analysis as far as I can see.
Yeah,
You
I've
know,
seen that video. There seems to be good questions raised about the orientation of the plane at impact. Yeah, those are interesting questions raised in that video.
yeah, he has an independent measurement of the speed of the plane, which it seems to be, he takes a lot into consideration by doing that. He's modeling three-dimensionally the last few seconds, since we can get a direct measurement of the speed that way. Seemed like an accurate way to do that. And he basically says the plane, he thinks the plane struck square to the surface of the building.
I tend to agree with that based on a couple of videos. Forgot who the videographer was, but it was right below building 2, looking up. There was a gentleman leaning on a newspaper machine. I think we've all seen the video, and the plane seems to go directly into the building, which conflicts with NIST's conclusion that it came in at more of an angle.
Okay, so we're ready for the next screen?
Certainly.
Okay.
Okay, I mentioned earlier the observed flight legs, and had they been implemented, seconds sooner or later than observed, and what happens in those cases. And if one looks closely, they can see that different start times necessarily result in different outcomes for an identical flight leg that we see in the video. We have the straight flight, and then it curves eventually, and it speaks to, again, the apparent precise coordination of bank angle and turn start times for what's seen in the video, and the remarkable either luck or precision in arriving at that during flight by an amateur pilot. In my opinion. But I think the illustration speaks well for itself in that case.
Okay.
And if we want, we can see to the next.
All righty.
And again, I try to support this mathematically as much as I could. And that one video we looked at earlier seems to be the only one that makes certain calculations available to us and possible. And this is just a wind triangle I mentioned earlier. It's just a vector triangle. If one recalls their junior high, high school trig, they'll probably be somewhat familiar with these in that case. I mentioned earlier a present crosswind during the flight of 175. The building was 11 degrees, almost perpendicular to the flight path. And I believe in the paper, it illustrates that had it not been properly accounted for, it had the capability of pushing the flight wide by about 100 feet during that final 5.5 seconds or 8 seconds, I believe it was, of flight. So it had to be accounted for. And what you see in the video, again, is rock steady 20-degree bank angle with no adjustments apparent. And again, I spoke of a precise coordination of correct bank angle, turn start time as well, and both of those needing to account for the crosswinds that were present, the vector forces. And if we want, we can move on to the next.
Okay.
And we're seeing here a screenshot of GPS quality for the coordinates of the World Trade Center at the time of the attacks on 9/11. The software is called Trimble planning software. And with that software, one can take GPS almanac data that's hosted by the US Coast Guard website for every day for a number of years. I was able to use the file for 9/11, run it through the software. It generates this illustration. And one can see that simultaneous to the aircraft attacks, one also finds that the GPS service quality was at or near maximum for the entire day, which speaks to possible foreknowledge of some party or parties may or may not have been behind some covert activity. I don't know. The same is also the case for the Pentagon coordinates. We find that the 77 attack occurs during the day at or near the maximum service quality available for the location that day as well. A closer look would be more helpful to the viewer if they can find the time after our presentation today. I can make, they're all available in two of the papers that I produced on the topic.
Great. All right, next.
Aidan, can you make available those links to your papers
Oh, certainly. Yeah. In fact, you can find them at
in the chat, maybe?
Journal
Or-
of 9/11 Studies.
Journal of 9/11 Studies? Okay, great.
Yeah. One paper was in 2008 and one was in 2009. And yeah, that's, yeah, that appears to be what we looked at earlier, I believe, was the Pentagon slide. And this is the World Trade Center slide. And that wide red vertical beam is the time period for the Flight 11 and 175 attacks. And one sees that the GPS service quality is at or near maximum quality for the entire day on 9/11.
Okay.
Coincidentally or not.
Let's see. I think we're on the last slide, right?
Possibly. And that's just a not to scale geometric representation of some of the things I described earlier, as far as being able to distinguish what distances were generated by the final twist of Flight 175 in the recorded flight video. And one can take a closer look on at their leisure for perhaps a better understanding of what I'm trying to explain here. So it's a little difficult to try to dumb down some of these technicalities with the math and geometry and so on, but hopefully I'm doing a satisfactory job of that. And I just made that available. I think it's a helpful illustration to illustrate what I'm trying to describe.
Okay.
And there are other items included that we can get into if you would like. It's contained in the two papers I mentioned earlier.
Do you want me to bring up your email to me and find that?
Actually, I do have a copy of the paper I mentioned in front of me. And we can delve into some items here that might help the listeners, have a better understanding of what's at play here.
But how can we share that?
Well, yeah, I guess getting into that, I'll proceed without illustrations, unless you would like to, of course, pull up my paper, which is at the Journal of 9/11 Studies under 2008, year 2008.
It might be a little cumbersome to me to try.
Oh, okay.
Any kind of
Oh,
time.
I think you have it. Yeah, I think that might be it right there.
Got it too.
Thank you, Gene. Always Gene to the rescue.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you, Gene.
You're welcome.
But related to the avionics tech I was speaking to earlier, the newer tech at the time also supported the capability of remotely transmitting via radio frequency an entire flight plan that will install into a flight management computer and be available for use. Which again speaks to, I believe, the plausibility of this technology being used on 9/11 that we're hypothesizing here today. Hopefully the listener can understand the significance of what I'm speaking to here with regards to remotely transmitted and automatically installed flight plans into these aircraft. It dovetails, I believe, the description with the technology of the uninterruptible autopilot that was coincidentally or not, almost immediately available after the attacks, but certainly under research and development just prior to and during the time of the attacks.
How many pages is this? 11? That's not
I
too
believe
bad.
it's 11.
Yeah.
Correct.
I just posted in the chat for anybody that wants to look
Oh,
at this at
thank
their
you.
leisure.
Yeah. Yeah, I just took a look at the chat. We had a lot of infiltrators exposing themselves in the chat.
Good grief.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a good thing. They expose themselves.
Aidan, could you help us out with some of the rookies? I mean, we hear terms like ILS and AIM system and VUAP. Could you give like a rookie level explanation of those terms?
Was there any were there any terms in particular that you needed input with?
I've heard of AIMS. I don't know where that came from. I guess it was a precursor to the VUAP system.
Oh, I think these are older generation ones that I actually don't know much about. I think one of them went back to the 50s, if I recall the speaker mentioning earlier. But yeah, there are so many acronyms. That's kind of a standard thing in the literature for the industry. Everything's represented by 3-letter acronyms.
Wow, look at your references.
Yeah, I try to be accurate. I try to footnote everything. I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you had contact with Dan Hanley? Do you work with him? Do you share notes on certain things?
That was going to be my question.
Sorry, Al.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he links to my paper, and we actually have collaborated. He did a Q&A with me maybe a year ago. I think it's on YouTube still. So yeah, it's gratifying to have that kind of endorsement of the research. A 25-year United pilot who actually flew the model aircraft that were used on 9/11.
Right. I think he speaks mostly of the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot system. That's kind of his thing, right?
Yes, and the technology I described here today is largely the foundation for that that system, the uninterruptible autopilot. In fact, in my paper, the one I think we had on screen earlier, it refers to research and development of collision avoidance systems that could remove control of an aircraft from a pilot were they to anticipate collision with another aircraft or the ground, for example. The research and development for that was underway. So that would be a very ideal covert technology that could have been deployed on 9/11. Perhaps we'll never know. But what's interesting is of the 4 aircraft on 9/11, 3 of them had their transponders either turned off or disabled somehow. The only one that continued to operate throughout its flight was United 175s. And coincidentally or not, what it did was facilitate its impact with Building 2 by warning away other aircraft with its traffic collision avoidance system beacon, and allows the flight management computers of 2 or more aircraft to basically talk to each other to implement evasive maneuvers. So basically what you had on 9/11 was a continuously operating transponder for 175 recklessly en route to building 2 at a very high speed. And 2 planes were able to get out of the way of it as a result of these traffic collision avoidance systems that rely on transponder operation. And as I had mentioned, 175s continuously operated throughout the attack, unlike the other 3 planes. And of the 4 planes, the only one that was ever in danger of midair collision with other aircraft was Flight 175. So coincidentally or not, its transponder remaining on did in fact facilitate its impact and ensure it with building 2 by getting other planes out of the way.
Okay, but not over New York City, right? Because that's restricted airspace, isn't it?
Well, it was in the vicinity of Flight 175 made a descending left turn into the building some miles out from Manhattan, and I believe there were documented at least 2 flights of other airlines that were considered at risk of collision.
Okay.
And the traffic collision avoidance systems have
Like
actually
earlier on the flight path, you mean?
yes, maybe minutes out from
Okay.
impact at that
Okay.
point.
Okay, and I'm curious about the Pentagon specifically because you know about the towers. You know, we've heard very often that you know even though as tall as the towers were and as much as they stood out from everything else, that really it was a very it was really difficult actually for someone who was piloting a plane to hit those buildings dead on, which makes the case for remote control. Um, but I'm wondering if you had any kind of like how does everything that you presented apply to the Pentagon? What's different? What can we draw from that one?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about the Stanford University R&D research and development of around 1998, where they describe in publications the capability of augmented GPS to support descending and ascending banked turns. And what you see in the Pentagon attack, of course, is a 270-degree descending right turn for the aircraft, which is precisely what is described in the Stanford literature. And legacy nav aids like VOR and DME, which are explained in the papers as well, didn't support that capability. But the augmented GPS does, and does so very accurately. And it could technically explain the Pentagon attack.
Technically.
Yeah. Now, of course, with Flight 77, there was an alleged recovery of flight data recorder information. What I noted in research was of the 2 recovered flight data recorders, neither contained inventory control serial numbers, which were at the time of my research the only ones during a 25-year period, I believe it was. And of course, that's, I think, critical information to evidence authenticity, in my humble opinion, as well.
Yes.
The data file that was generated by the Flight 77 data recorder contains a file creation timestamp that precedes the official recovery time for the black box by about 4 hours. So it's essentially what the government is claiming, in effect, is finding a weapon committed in a crime 4 hours before the crime actually took place.
Interesting.
It's an impossibility.
No, it is. I'm just for full disclosure, I'm not. I don't believe that a plane hit the Pentagon, but I was just curious because the argument is made that it could, you know, it could be flown into it or it could have been remote controlled into it, but that's not where I actually stand. So
yeah, I think a good position for all to take on the Pentagon is to say whether it did hit or didn't hit, one can understand the opposing point of view. It's a complex issue, which we may never have an answer to, but I don't think one side can necessarily blame the other for what they think did or didn't
Yeah.
happen.
I think that's a really, I think, you know what? I think that's a point that needs to be made more often among all of those who have made this particular subject a very difficult one sometimes. You're right. I think that we need to keep that in mind. We can definitely understand where the other side is coming from and how they explain it, and how they can, align with that explanation. And I think that does go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, for example, I may believe in outcome A, but I don't blame someone else for believing in outcome B.
Right.
There's so little information, some contradictory information regarding the crash scene and events there, alleged events. So yeah, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Chris
Unfortunately.
Bernier has his hand raised.
Yeah, hello, Aidan. Yeah, I've been a 9/11 researcher for quite some time. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, I happen to have a degree in aerospace engineering, so
Oh, excellent.
hopefully that brings something to the table. I want to do a share screen here just for a second here. Can I not do a share screen?
Yeah, I'd shut it off because of the hackers, but let me.
Oh, okay.
Real quick, I'll turn it back on.
Yeah.
There you go. You should be good now.
Okay, I wanted to share this video here, and it's a NASA plane hitting a wall at 500 miles an hour. Okay, so you guys are you guys watching the video right now?
Oh, we don't see it.
Okay, hold on. Let me share it. Okay, I'm sharing it now.
Yep.
Is that
See it now.
the F4 Phantom? Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's crashing into a wall at 500 miles an hour. Now notice I'm stopping it. Now notice all the debris that's jetting off the face of that wall. Okay. So as it's crashing in, the debris is kind of coming out at like a 45-degree angle to the face of that wall. At the very, I'll replay that again. Okay. Okay,
Yes.
so that's what real crash dynamics looks like. Okay, now I'd like to go to this. Hold on, let me do a screen share again here.
You have to stop
Let
sharing.
me. Okay, I gotta stop it. Right. Stop, and then hold on, screen share, and let me play this. I'm gonna share this one right now. Can you all see this one? So this is the flight, the airplane hitting the towers. If you look down below, and you also see a whale coming up from the middle of a gymnasium. But if you look below, and you watch the airplane actually hit the tower. Now look at the right wing of the plane. See the right wing of the plane? That right wing of the plane is just melting into the face of that tower. It's not, that right wing is not coming off, and it's just, and you don't see any resemblance. You do see a little bit of impact from the two engines there, but that right wing, that is not real physics. That is definitely not real crash dynamics. So based on that, my theory is that what we have is a hologram crashing into the building. And if you can see the whale coming up through the center of that gymnasium, that's that's pretty easy technology just on current. I mean, you can go to a theme park and watch that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they could develop the stuff over at Area 51 to make a real holographic plane crash into the tower. So I believe that's the real truth. And I also believe that the holographic plane was probably cloaked. It was a missile cloaked by a holographic plane. I think that's the best, best explanation for what we're seeing. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And then if you've heard of Richard D. Hall's research from the UK, he spent 3 months researching this, called his 3D radar analysis, and I urge everyone to take a look at that. I'll put it into the chat.
I just wondered if you entertained the hologram scenario.
I personally don't. I guess with respect to building 2, the video we were looking at, half of the surface area of each face of the building is comprised of glass. The windows were about 3 feet wide, and each beam in between each window was 2 to 3 feet wide. So overall, there's an area, a surface area of the building comprised essentially of 50% glass. And also the wings that we were just looking at earlier are essentially, in fact, just hollow aluminum. Whereas the wall that was impacted by the F4, I think that was designed, it was solid, and also I think it was designed to withstand the impact.
Well, there's also steel beams close centered where that wing is hitting, and it looks like it's not making contact with any of those beams. It looks like it's just melting right through it. I mean, in reality, you'd see that wing break off, you know. And then also the airplane wouldn't be going 550 or 580 miles per hour. I believe top speed would be about 340 miles per hour, and that's just how fast. That's the maximum speed a Boeing can go at sea level, with with the air being 3 times as dense as it is at 30,000 feet. They go 500 miles an hour, but not sea level. So I don't see how they can make the airplane go that fast. I don't see, I think they're faking the crash dynamics. So that's just my take on it.
I have an answer for it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just take the plane apart. Every bullet, every aluminum panel coming at the building at 500 and whatever miles per hour. If you were standing there and you were hit by a bolt going 500 miles an hour, it'd go in one side and right out the other. There gets to be a point where the momentum of all the parts is so great that the wings wouldn't break off. The wings have their own momentum and they'll just continue right through. And then as far as the speed goes, maybe I should hold off on this, but the military did have special tankers made that could carry huge amounts of fuel, and they were greatly reinforced. And my theory is, I go along with the theory that these were excess tankers that they just got rid of, that had been made especially strong by Boeing, and in the contest for who got the contract for supplying a large number of tankers to the Air Force, and those were very strong. I know they can be made very, very strong, so they can go 500 miles an hour at almost the ground level.
Regarding the subtopic we're discussing here, there is one video in particular, I think, that supports the collision of an actual aircraft with Building 2. I forgot the name of the videographer, but he put the camera on a tripod, turned it on, and left. It's a close-up of Building 2 looking west. Plane comes into the image left to right. And what one sees if playing back the video at a higher speed is the building after impact oscillates north and south for a number of seconds. So there's actual lateral movement of the building that would probably only be the result of tremendous lateral force, such as an aircraft impact with the building.
Good point, Aidan. You also have the testimonies of people inside the building who were knocked in the bathroom. Richard Wright, in particular, who was knocked sideways, and they heard screams in the ladies' bathroom, and this gal was locked inside of her toilet compartment because the compartment partitions were all fucked up. They were jammed against each other, and it took them a long time to get her out of there. So this is, and then you have the the actual measurement of the lateral swaying of the building, it oscillated several feet. And that's very well documented. And one guy describes the cords of the blinds inside as moving back and forth 3 feet. And that's just the beginning of the proof that planes hit the towers. There's 40 different videos of the planes. There's firefighters like Richard Patterson, who was under the direction of the FBI picking up plane parts from various places and putting them in a bin after they stopped rescue operations. I know one guy said, for whatever reason, an FBI guy had picked up an aileron, and he had took a picture of it. I've got it, of an aileron being carried off. So yeah, there's lots of plane parts. I mean, there's lots of questions about from what plane those plane parts came.
Sure.
Fran, sure.
You guys hear me?
Dave?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I'm on my phone. I don't know how to put my hands up on the phone.
Oh.
I tried to connect on the computer, but then it was like, it says the host is closed. Because I want to connect to the computer, but I can't. It says the host closed joining the meeting or something.
Did you have a question? Because David Chandler also has a question.
Well, I just want to make a point because a lot of people have a misconception about the swaying. The swaying in the Scott Myers footage, it's after the explosion. It's not before. If you the video that he was talking about where it's sped up, that cuts out frames, so it's actually misleading. To actually see it properly, you need to see the original footage, go frame by frame, and then you'll see that the swaying is well after the explosion, not before. So it actually glides in like a hologram. Like that's the best way I can explain it. I just wanted to bring that up. And
can I speak yet?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Okay, a couple of points. One on the swaying, since we just left there. Wayne Costi did a direct measurement, and the swaying starts immediately as the building was hit. So I don't know where the other speaker was getting that idea. Secondly, as far as
the video play by play.
Wait a minute, I'm
frame by
speaking.
frame. I know. I'm just wanted to.
I'm saying he did a measurement, and I'm confident that he did it correctly, and it was from the very beginning. So I don't accept your idea that whatever measurement you're talking about was later. I know that Wayne, who I work with,
Well, I can show the video if you guys
directly.
let me join.
Excuse me,
I can show the video. I know. I'm just saying I can show you the video.
This isn't what I got on here to say. I just made that as a passing comment. Okay. I just
I understand, but I can show the video. The video, you can all see it. The measurement is the.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. I'm just saying I have information contradictory to what you're saying, and so people can just take that for what it's worth. Now, what I really wanted to say is, one of the questions on the high speed at low altitude is, keep in mind the plane was in a dive. And so if it, whether or not it could maintain that kind of a speed consistently in level flight, I don't know. But the fact that it's in a dive can launch it into higher speed that it could, it basically was coming in for a dive the entire way into the building. Same is true of Flight 77, by the way. It was in a dive. Okay, the other thing is, I had a third point. Okay, I can't remember my third point, but it was also, on the speed of the plane. Oh yeah, I mentioned earlier the Atcham Spock video looking at Flight 175. And he, like I said, he does 3D modeling using all the various photographic viewpoints throughout the city, take all of the where the plane was second by second as seen from all of these different angles. So it's highly redundant, and it plots the position of the plane second by second. And from measurements on the 3D model, he comes up with a direct measurement that confirms the high speed of the plane. So those are my comments.
And William Henderson. Yes, William Henderson has a question in the chat. With regards to Building 7, can anyone explain the lack of explosion sounds when B7 was disintegrated?
I'll take a stab at that. We know that there is evidence of incendiaries in the aftermath of Building 7. It's abundant, clear, and irrefutable. We don't believe, we being most of the researchers in the 9/11 truth movement, I would say, that explosives were used in Building 7, like most of us do believe they were used in addition to incendiaries in the Twin Towers. So incendiaries like thermite and thermate don't crack like explosives. And so they're not as easily picked up. However, there are sounds of explosions. David Chandler, for one, has documented audio analysis of explosions, and there's others who have done a great job showing the witnesses turning around violently, hearing something behind them. So David could add to that if he'd like, or others.
Okay, yeah, can I just jump in here?
Yes.
I don't, and I keep losing where my little hand raising thing is. So in any case, all right, yes, that thing I did, the sound, it's called Sound Evidence of Explosions. It's on 911speakout.org. Go into under the David Chandler tab, and you'll find it down there. And so that one is looking primarily at the sounds heard by Ashley Banfield and her persons who was interviewing. There's also a view from the one that's looking up at the building. I forget anyways, camera 3, but it has a boom that's just prior to the, it's a very significant, very muffled boom that you have to crank up the audio to hear it, but it's there just prior to the collapse of the East Penthouse. And the other thing is that there's a lot of, the NIST went around and actively swept up as many videos as they could. They've taken the sound out of a lot of videos that you would expect there would be sound present. And some of them, like there was the one video that shows, what's her name at KPFA? Anyway, she's watching, the video shows Building 7 coming down with no audio. And then once the building is down, all of a sudden it starts audio. So I don't know why, how a camera would switch from no audio to audio all of a sudden. That seems to have been eliminating. So I think they did a lot of active elimination of sound video.
Amy Goodman.
Amy Goodman. I lose names. I'm getting old. There you go.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Just wanted to update you all. I got an email from Zoom warning me about our disruption. It says, hi there, we're reaching out to you because a meeting scheduled on your Zoom account has been posted online and it doesn't have security features enabled.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Don't worry about it.
I never got it before, but they shared the Twitter link that somebody shared it on.
It's probably the hacker guy making
Yeah.
I had a question for Aidan.
Yes.
There was talk I've heard a couple times about somebody saw a green light in the building and whether there was a homing beacon. Have you ever researched any of that as far as this remote control or in addition to remote control?
I think there's one video I saw where a red light is alleged to be a laser casting against the south wall of Building 2, right prior to impact with the flight. I don't think it was one. I mean, could have been. I think it's an artifact in the video or some other anomaly. Regardless, I think the kind of beacon technology you described just wouldn't be as reliable as the GPS guidance, and B rather, given the technology that was already available, I don't think such a mechanism would even be necessary. I think everything that was needed was available, and as well, going back to the alleged video fakery CGI hypothesis. I don't know what would be gained by it, because we already have conventional means by which to deliver real aircraft into real buildings. So these elaborate theories that are out there about video fakery, I don't know what they would achieve for any foul play actors.
Another quick question.
We weren't talking about CGI, just a quick note. It's not CGI. The most accurate one of our position is, or at least my position, is holographic cloaking of a drone / missile type object aircraft. Just wanted to bring that up. So it's not CGI. CGI is disinfo. That is.
Yeah, I see. And in that case as well, I guess I just don't see a need for it, given that there were already conventional means to deliver conventional aircraft into actual buildings. So
yeah, that's just the contention we have. Yeah, that the flight dynamics we think is impossible. So that's the contention we have. And I agree that but you had good points about how the aircraft was rolling like 18 degrees. So that's another one that was very interesting. Like a few seconds before, it rolled 18 degrees at around 500 miles an hour. So that one there, aluminum wing would have broken up, is what I would contend, and of an actual Boeing.
I guess it would be really helpful if we could perform some wind tunnel experiments, but those only seem to belong to those in the industry and government. So if there's another way, it would certainly be an interesting experiment I'd like to see carried out.
There is a way, because planes that have gone out of control and then, plunged to the ground and then, been saved at the last minute. They're going a lot faster than 600 miles an hour, and they have to pull up sharply. And actually, the airliners don't lose their wings in those situations. Private planes are not built as strongly, and they will lose their wings. But I've looked at many of those plunge dive, rescue with airliners, and in not one did the wing come off.
You're right. There have been a number of nosedive crashes over the years, even in recent years. I think there was one in China not too long ago, in fact, where it was caught on video. The plane, like a rocket, was going straight into the ground at 400, 500, 600 miles per hour, perhaps. It was a Boeing 737, I think, and it stayed intact all the way down.
More than that, probably.
Yeah,
but that's not the same thing as trying to torque the plane opposite of where it's already going. So like the plane's going 500 miles an hour, you don't expect the wing to come up, but it's the torquing that quickly. And beyond that, just the control as well. Even if it was remote control, that large of a plane. But the thing is, I do agree that there is some sort of remote controlling aspect of it, but a smaller aircraft with that holographic cloaking. The other one I wanted to bring up, if you saw the missing wing, because you've probably seen the Flight 175 a lot of times. There's over 10 videos showing the missing wing at the exact same time and place. And one of the eyewitnesses directly below the tower said he thought he saw a rocket. Like there's varying degrees of the witness testimony. It's compared to all the people around there, there's very few that actually saw what plane.
I guess it would be interesting to account for just how many people, in fact, were on record as actually seeing a plane go into a building or both buildings.
Yeah, there was a study on that, but that Andrew Johnson did. But another point I wanted to bring up, because yeah, but like close by, there was like 200, 300 people that witnessed that said they heard. No, actually, there was. I'll have to look at the exact numbers, but relative to the amount of people there, There's very, very few, especially the ones that had that were witnesses to the event. But then the other question I want to bring up. I don't know why the microphone just muted. I just want to discuss about the Pentagon. Because like apparently it was going 530. I can't hear anything. So my thing is messed up. I'll just hang. I'll stop.
I could hear you.
Yeah, my headphones were off. I'm just gonna stop the headphones. Yeah, I'll turn off my headphones. Let's see.
Gene, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a second question there for Aidan. There was talk about TMZ did a report about the fifth plane, United 23, that never left the ground. It was interesting that one of the stewardesses said that the security folks came on, sealed the plane, had everybody take off the plane, sealed the plane. She was standing by and watched, and she could see through the windows there was somebody got access on board. She wondered how that had happened. When the security team made their way to unseal the plane, they saw the floor hatch was open. Now this remote control system that you're talking about, that would be installed in the lower compartment of the plane. If a plane was installed with this remote control technology and they didn't want it found, let's say, would somebody gain access? This is a hypothetical, that whether somebody would have gained access to that plane to remove that remote control mechanism, server blade or whatever it would be. Could you speak anything on that?
Yeah, I did see the documentary you referred to. I guess what would have been very convenient for any potential bad actors was the fact that the technology we're describing here was standard across the United and American 757 and 767 fleets. The future functions that only became available in year 2003 were essentially laying dormant within these airplanes for several years. They were announced as being ready for installation in 98 and 99. And therefore, you're talking about year 2000, year 2001 and onward, this technology being available for unofficial use, certainly, covert use, possibly. And as I mentioned, official use by year 2003, once the FAA standardized the protocols.
Well, you wouldn't even have to do that, Aidan, right? If you had a military aircraft painted as a civilian aircraft that was, reinforced and capable and already outfitted with remote technology in even a year or more before 9/11.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I can't rule out the possibility that, either the planes were over-engineered beyond their specs, or B, that the airplanes on 9/11 were somehow modified or substituted with other more durable aircraft. Certainly the Boeing 767 has a tanker version that was probably more durable than the commercial, and the government does and did have different 757s for certain uses, like NASA's 757 Ares Research and Development platform. Before I forget, one quick interesting point was detail noted by Kevin Ryan. He found that the only floors that had been re-fireproofed by 9/11 were the same floors where the airplanes impacted and subsequently burned. A remarkable coincidence, in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't the only floors. There were several floors that weren't hit by the planes that were also upgraded, but coincidentally, the main section of the fireproofing upgrades were indeed hit.
Yeah, just a few patches in each building, and I think the majority of them seem to be in the impact and fire zones. Coincidentally or not, I just thought that was an interesting detail that he noted a while back.
Very cynical experiment.
Yeah, it tends to dovetail with the idea that the building implosions were disguised by a aircraft fire-induced collapse hypothesis.
Sorry.
Sue, would it be okay if I just share one little quick video about what I was talking about, that fifth plane thing?
Yes.
Okay. This is TMZ investigates 9/11, the fifth plane, United Flight 23, and this gentleman shows just how easy it is to gain control to this compartment where this, for lack of a better term, this remote control server blade would be installed. And it's really easy as just popping up and you have access right to this compartment where all of those components are. And when they came, unsealed the plane, they found this floor hatch, which he's showing just how easy. He gained access to the bottom of the plane, and now he hops up into the upper part of the plane. And that's how they found it when they opened up the door to come in with that hatch open. So somebody was down there on this plane incident.
That's amazing.
I've seen that video before. Yeah.
The avionics bay would be an ideal hiding place for any subjects.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I think this is a good time to stop the presentation.
I have one more thing, one more comment.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
the Amy Goodman in Building 7, I know most of you know this, but this is just for the few that don't. She was asked, well, why didn't you cover Building 7? You were right there. And she said, because I want to live.
Oh.
And also, most of her staff are 9/11 from now those days are 9/11 truthers. For example, Aaron Mate was, I think he was just under her, and he's a truther. He doesn't speak out loudly about it because it might cause him terrible problems, but they do know, but they don't want to lose their show.
Right. Thank you.
If I may, real quick, back to the building demolitions. I think mentioning Kevin Ryan once again, I think he noted in his research the research and development of sound suppression, explosive sound suppression for this nanothermite technology that he was able to identify during his research. One could probably find it in one of his papers, but I thought that might tend to possibly explain why there weren't any overt explosive sounds coinciding with the demolitions.
Here's the point I wanted to make about I want to talk about the Pentagon plane. You mentioned that the wind should have at least altered the alleged plane, the flight 175. But then the flight 77, apparently, according to the official story, it was going around 530 miles an hour at ground level, and it hit 5 metal light poles, and it did not get swayed in any way. The wings not only didn't get damaged, like to the point where it still maintained its course through 5 light poles before going into the Pentagon. So, want to have your thoughts on that?
The wing did get damaged. The right wing, there was a piece that fell off before it got to the Pentagon.
No, I mean, and it wasn't swayed. The direction where it was going did not. And also, the news report said that there was nothing remotely of a large plane. The smallest, the largest piece that the reporter, like on impact, around that area was about like 3 feet. And he was saying there's pretty much nothing looked like an actual plane. But the question still remains, even if they did find a wing there, the question is, it went through 5 light poles and did not get swayed. Like the path kept going without getting off course. So we're not just wind that is supposed to blow off the flight 175, but flight 77 had 5 metal light poles going through.
There's a green Lincoln parked right there, right after it happened, and that man was interviewed, and it's a very interesting interview where he says that I can't speak out. I've been warned, they'll kill me. But then he does speak out. He talks for a little while. I've seen that interview. But he infers that those poles were knocked down, with explosives or something like that.
If I may,
Interesting.
just speculating, I think possibly momentum physics might explain how the plane could have possibly remained in flight and on course at
I was,
certain high
sorry,
speeds. Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all. I'm
Okay.
finished.
I was immediately thinking about, there's a difference between kinetic energy and momentum. All right. In order to, if you have a railroad car moving slowly, it's going to, and it hits you on the track, it's going to push you down the track. It's going to move you. All right. It has all that momentum, right? A bullet that's much less massive, but much higher speed could have the same momentum, but the bullet's just going to go inside and out, in one side, out the other, and leave you standing where you are, because it has it's the v squared that shows up in the formula there. So in other words, the kinetic energy, if you have a high speed impact, it has much more of a tendency to leave all the shattered pieces where they are and just to go right on through. If it's a larger mass, slower speed, that's when it's going to tend to carry you along and push you down the way. So same idea is the difference between a boxer hitting your face and having a karate chop. And the karate chop is higher speed, lower mass, and it can break things more, whereas the boxer's fist, it has more of a tendency to move you. So there's a difference in the way momentum and energy fit into that. So anyway, so you can't just make glib assumptions about things as far as what they would do.
I'm not sure which physics you're looking at, but the way it works is it's the hardness of the material. The reason the bullet goes through it is harder. The bullet goes through weaker things. So if you're, for example, a fly, if you're driving and a fly hits the windshield, the fly's not going through the windshield. Doesn't matter how fast the fly's going.
The windshield goes through the fly.
Yeah, but that's what is supposed to happen. It's all relative. And the other point is, a bullet, if you were to shoot at the same steel beams, it's not going to go through, because first of all, they're not as strong as steel beams, and also military does not use aluminum bullets for a reason, even though they travel way faster than a plane. And that's why that's why they have bunker buster missiles. Even missiles.
Lead is a soft metal and it can penetrate steel.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a very dense, very strong metal. It's no one builds bullets with aluminum, and there's a reason, again, like I was saying, the bunker buster. The other part about Flight 175, they have a delayed explosion. So that if you can, so what I'm saying is there's no plane crash or any kind of kinetic crash with just a fuel carrier that has a delayed explosion through like 100 feet of steel. And then, so if you look at the footage, the explosion is well after it gets absorbed into the building. Again, very, very similar to a bunker buster missile. And again, there's a reason why they use bunker buster missiles instead of just any ordinary missile.
I'd like to make a comment at this point. I have a course that I have created, physics course I've created for homeschoolers as part of my business on the side. I've chopped off the first semester's worth of it, and I've relabeled it Physics for 9/11. I made a link specifically, I put it on my website. You go to 9/11 Speak Out, and under one of those tabs, you can find where it says physics comments and all that. You can actually get an entire first semester course taught by me on the whole thing, has all the stuff about energy, momentum, everything else. And there's a lot of people who I think would benefit from that in studying 9/11 issues.
Yes, I've
9/11speakout.org.
I know, but I understand. That's good to know. But I've done physics for many years. I've a bachelor's in civil engineering and a master's in mining engineering. I've been that was the first thing. One of the first things I noticed. Once I realized the truth of 9/11, I realized the plane physics it's very. You can argue the physics. I'm saying, well, in my opinion, you can't argue it. But if you say you can debate that, what I'm saying is there's no actual comparison. You're not going to find an actual experiment that has anything replicating 9/11 besides something like a bunker buster missile. So that's what I mean. There's nothing out there. So basically it's open. So if you ever find anything that's remotely close to, for example, Flight 175, I'll be open to look at that.
If I may, regarding the Pentagon event and the seeming lack of debris, fragmentation, etc., one would recall the video played earlier of the F-4 going into the concrete wall that literally dustified upon impact, and would tend to explain why we don't seem to see as much debris at the Pentagon scene as one might expect.
That test crash, if you look at the full video, there's actually like millions of parts, but they're all very tiny. Unlike any of the sites on 9/11, there's actually millions of parts but they're all very small. It's not like you'll just find like at each 9/11 site where you have a wheel here or a little debris there, but you actually have like hundreds of thousands of little parts. And also the impact, if you see it, it goes through like a few inches only of the concrete. Like it barely even dents the concrete. So and my contention is if a steel beam, even if it has windows in between, same thing. It would not go through. Maybe it would dent it a tiny bit, but nothing. But certainly not a delayed explosion like a bunker bust.
I have a different analogy for you, Matthew. If you've ever sliced an egg in an egg slicer, I think you'll be closer to what happens to an analogy that works for the aluminum plane, which is indeed very soft. And the vertical columns, which are 14-inch square steel tube columns, probably 3/4 of an inch or more thick, but they're every 3 feet 4 inches. So there's 2 feet between each column of air. The plane wings were shredded through those vertical egg slicer wires, if you will. In the egg slicer, it's a wire. These vertical columns forced the soft aluminum to go between them and around them. I'm talking about the smaller wings. The larger wings with the fuel inside, the larger portion of the wing with the fuel inside it had much more mass. And what that actually did was puncture the exoskeleton, which are 3 vertical columns welded to 3 horizontal spandrel panels, which were in turn bolted to each other with only at the top and bottom 4 bolts, which I think were 5/8 inch diameter. I'm not quite sure. So it sheared those bolts, punching in these exterior skeletons. And it's not like a cookie cutter, like is claimed by some. It's an actual orthogonal pattern of how these steel sections on the perimeter were constructed. So it's very clear what happened. The heaviest parts of the plane punched in those sections. The lightest parts of the plane, half or so of the wing, simply got shredded around those vertical columns.
Again, I'm not sure which physics you guys are looking at. Like the actual footage shows it goes in. There's a delayed explosion afterwards. There's no wing damage perceived on impact in any footage.
Well, you don't have the resolution to actually see it. What you're seeing is a low res image from thousands of feet away. The actual damage pattern is very clear because they got right up close and photographed it after the fact.
When I'm saying even after the fact, it does not resemble an actual plane going in. And also there's videos of much closer than 1,000 feet. There's like the Scott Myers one is really close. You can see it go in, no swing until after the explosion. And there's no and again, even the heavier parts, meaning the engine, etc. It does not have, there's no noise as well of it hitting steel. If you shoot a bullet and then it hits steel, you're gonna hear a loud bang. This one, there's no noise. It goes in cleanly, like it's like a little knife through butter, and then delayed explosion. And so
Curious.
not only the
Very
heavy
loud
parts,
explosion, very loud
but
explosion heard from far away.
no, there's no bang at impact. Go look at any footage. Everything is afterwards. It goes in with no crumbling, no noise.
I have
The noise is a
seen
big one.
many videos with very loud.
I know, but then I don't know if you're being truthful or not. But anyways, for
One
those
needs
who
to account for the speed of sound waves in these hypotheses.
well, they're all pretty close by. The speed of sound is from most of the videos, it's going to be like just a delayed noise. But what I mean is, there's no noise. There's no separate noise from the explosion. The explosion is the actual only one.
I'm curious.
The only
he
one that
says
makes any noise.
It doesn't. He said, Matt, you say it doesn't look like what a plane would look like going into a building, but earlier you said there's never been an episode where we saw something match this. So you're contradicting yourself.
No, I'm saying there's nothing even in the lab. There's nothing that you can go to a university, get any sort of small
Yeah, so
scale,
you can't
anything.
say that it doesn't look like what a plane should look like.
No,
going
I'm
into
saying
a
there's
building.
many planes that crash into the thing. You can even test out steel going through a car. There's that Mythbusters. They have a steel plow. A steel plow,
That's not a
much
plane.
weaker,
That's
much
not a
weaker
plane.
than the steel beams.
Again, that's
On
not a plane.
9/11,
I can
it
throw a
slices the car
water
in half.
balloon at 100 miles an hour at chicken wire, and you'll probably get the same type of Newtonian physics that what happened on 9/11.
That's completely different. I don't know what. For example, go throw a pop. A closest one would be throw a pop can filled with fluid at a fridge. That'd be the closest thing. One thing that will never happen is the fridge is not going to just fall down.
Do you have a fridge with 6-inch gaps going through the door? That doesn't make any sense.
Put 7-inch gaps. It doesn't matter. Get a giant, a giant pop can. It's the same. That's pretty much what a plane is. It's just a giant aluminum can. And again, the delayed explosion. That's what I mean by there's nothing comparable that you can actually replicate, because that's not a real physics one.
Have you seen videos of a ping pong ball going through 3/4-inch plywood?
Yeah, but a ping pong ball itself is harder and it's going 1,000.
No, it's not hard. It's going to collapse. I don't understand. You can't say that that's harder than plywood.
If you look at it, it explodes. It doesn't. It explodes at the point of impact. If you go look at them, compare, go video by video, it's completely different from this one.
It makes a ping pong ball-sized hole that it puts through it, and it's just the idea of the kinetic energy of the ping pong ball. It's effective.
Yeah, but it's like if you throw anything at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, the impact is just going to be a giant explosion and goes through. It doesn't actually go through. If you look at it, it just explodes. It explodes. The actual impact of it is completely different than the gliding through delayed explosion. So if the ping pong ball was able to go through the plywood and then explode, then you have the same thing. So
we have.
I can't keep up with the speed of your confabulation. So
all right.
On that note, we have gone overtime, and we do have an agenda to also cover tonight. I invite you all to stay for the agenda if you like. But it's the Boston 9/11 Truth local agenda. So may not be of interest to those outside of Boston 9/11 Truth, but that's fine. You can stay if you want. But our next meeting will be August 22nd, and we will have Chuck Fall and Trina from TAP as our guest speakers. So I look forward to you all joining us again on the 22nd. Thank you, Aidan, so much for your patience during this rather disruptive presentation. I wish we had taken control of that earlier, but we appreciate your presentation and your thorough research, and very, very happy you joined us tonight. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you for having me, and I'm gratified that people felt that there was a need to disrupt what I think is a presentation of good evidence.
I think that's a very good point, and that's the way I look at it too. Even though it was upsetting, I'm kind of glad it all happened. Yeah.
Likewise.
I wanted to suggest you save the video of it, because then later we can do a presentation on disruption of meetings.
Yes.
Disruption tactics. We can use part of that for that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. All right.
Susan, this is Fran Shore, actually speaking.
Oh, Fran.
I just want to thank Susan, you and Al, and I want to thank everyone from Boston for doing these presentations. In a way, you're keeping 9/11 Truth alive with all these presentations that you're doing. And I was especially interested in hearing Aidan's presentation because all these years I've never heard him speak. So thanks to everybody.
I was glad you showed up, Aidan. I've read your stuff, but I haven't ever actually spoken with you or met you, and this is a way of meeting of sorts.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Likewise. Good conversation.
Real quick, Tony, did you have any
thanks for having me, guys. Also, wanted to state last year someone disrupted my live stream with pretty much the same drawings, so that was weird as well.
Huh. Wonder if
I've
it's
in the chat I've put how to prevent Zoom bombing, which kind of got this one back under control. So if anybody has Zoom and want to try to prevent that ever happens again, it's in the chat. There's a link there.
Okay.
People actually disrupted my Buddhist meditation online one time, and they played some obscene thing around the same sort of like general level of maturity in the middle of the Buddhist meditation video.
Well, the same thing happened.
So Matt, so when can you come back and give a presentation?
Whenever, I'm free to present whenever.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great for you to give some presentations and share your points of view. I really appreciate them.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Well, all our guest speakers from here on out are to be approved by our speaker committee. So anyone feel free to email me and or Al with what you would like to present, and we will forward that to our speaker committee for a vote. That's the way it works. Okay.
Forgive me real quick. I wanted to see if Tony had a question. Being a pilot, wrapping up with Aidan, any takeaways or you're muted. Yeah, you're still muted. There it is.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. No, I enjoyed it. That was very interesting, and yeah, I'd probably like to talk to you more. Maybe. Would you be up for that, Aidan?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in a sequel. I mean, it's a pretty broad topic.
Yeah, it was a little more technical than most of the conversations that I've heard. So a lot of it was over my head, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
Do you two have each other's contact information?
No.
I don't think so.
Is your email in the chat, Aidan?
I'm not sure. Susan certainly has it. She's welcome to share it.
Emails private because it seems that some people have gotten a bunch of emails that they shouldn't have had. So, you know, if you two are agreeable, I will send an email to each of you introducing each other. Okay?
That would be fine.
I think
Thank
that's a
you.
better way to handle it than making it completely public. Yeah. Especially since we're still recording. All right, let's stop recording. Thank you all for joining us again. I really, it was really lively. One of my boring. All right, thank you. And join us again on the 22nd for Chuck Fall and Trina at TAP.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, I'm going to start the agenda portion and stop recording.